Right, so today we are going to talk about hormone synthesis, and we'll start our discussion with one complex area of hormone synthesis, right? That is synthesis of steroid hormones, right? Synthesis of steroid hormones. Steroid hormones synthesis. Now, when we talk about steroid hormone, the first thing which we have to know that all the steroid hormones are primarily derived from which molecule? Cholesterol, right? Everyone thinks cholesterol is very bad, but actually excess of cholesterol is bad. Can you believe it? If cholesterol disappear from your body, what will happen? You will have many serious problems, very, very serious problems. Right? Cholesterol is one of the very important molecule in our body. Only the problem with this molecule is it is very notorious. Right? Otherwise it is doing very many good functions. Look at this young man. If his cholesterol cannot be converted into testosterone, you know how he will look? And more terrible situation, look at this young woman. If her cholesterol cannot be converted into estrogen, you can imagine what will happen to her. So cholesterol is in reasonable amount a very important part of our metabolic system, right? Cholesterol is a very important part of our cell membrane also, right? Now, the hormones which are derived from cholesterol, they are synthesized or derived from cholesterol. There are 5 important classes. Yes, 5 important classes of hormones which are derived from the certain modifications in cholesterol molecule. Progesterones are made where? In which tissues? Oh, she forget. In the ovaries, very good. In the ovaries, corpus luteum produces a lot of progesterone. In second half of the cycle, you know, when Graafian follicle eventually lead to ovulation and what is left behind is corpus luteum, it produces a lot of progesterone, right? And which other important organ can produce progesterone? Yes. Oh my God. Yes, ma'am. Which other important organ can produce huge amount of progesterone? Very good, placenta. Placenta, it produces a lot of progesterone. So it means that actually corpus luteum and placenta have all the enzymatic machinery to convert the cholesterol into progesterone, right? Then, can you tell me progesterone can be converted into some important things? I will be impressed if you can tell me. No, progesterone cannot be directly converted into estrogen. Progesterone, I will show you later, can be converted into aldosterone. Right? Can be converted into aldosterone, which is mineralocorticoid, right? Mineralocorticoid secreted by the adrenal cortex and maintaining it help in reabsorption of sodium and water and expulsion of potassium. Is that right? We'll talk about that later. But aldosterone is mineralocorticoid, hormone released from cortex of adrenal gland and dealing with the mineral metabolism. Which minerals? Sodium and potassium. It is sodium and water retainer and it leads to potassium expulsion through many areas. One is the kidney, even from the GIT. Aldosterone leads to retention of salt and water and expulsion of potassium. Even in your sweat glands, aldosterone leads to retention of salt and water and expulsion of potassium, even from your parotid glands, right? So it's a mineralocorticoid. This is the second class. Then there is another class of steroid hormones, Glucocorticoids. Have you heard of them? Glucocorticoids. This is a hormone also produced from adrenal. Yes? Cortex. Right? And it deals with the energy metabolism. Right? Glucocorticoids deal with the energy metabolism. Then, yes, any other? Testosterone. Testosterone. And eventually estrogens. These are the 5 basic classes of hormones which are called steroid hormone. Right? Progesterone, testosterone and estrogen, they are considered sex hormones, right? And aldosterone, mineralocorticoid, glucocorticoids are dealing with the energy metabolism. Important component here is cortisol or cortisone, right? Then of course we should not forget that there is, now we consider active form of vitamin D also steroid hormone or steroid hormone like substances. Active form of vitamin D3. Active vitamin D3. The chemical name of that is 125 dihydroxycholecalciferol. That we'll study in detail in vitamins. Right? So if someone asks you what are the components, steroid hormones which are derived from the cholesterol, these 5 plus this. Plus there are other substances which can also be derived from cholesterol. Now I will give you a hint. There is a substance which is produced in the liver that is also derived from cholesterol, and that is not hormone. What is that substance? Listen carefully. There is a substance which is secreted by the liver. This substance comes into bile, right? It is derived from cholesterol, but this substance is not a hormone. All of you know that. Bile acids, bile salts, they are also derived from the cholesterol nucleus, steroid nucleus, but of course that is not a hormone. Anyway, let's see, we put a cholesterol here and see how it can go under different type of pathways and eventually convert into these hormones. Before we really go into detail of pathway for the cholesterol, any one of you knows the structure of cholesterol? Look, doctors are not supposed to know the structure, the organic structures of many compounds, but they are supposed to know at least the structure of cholesterol, because the modification of cholesterol molecule which eventually result into aldosterone or cortisol or into estrogen, progesterone or testosterone. What are these hormones? They are just modified and altered cholesterol molecules. Are you understanding? That all these hormones, steroid hormones, are just modified and altered cholesterol molecule. So we should know what is the basic structure of cholesterol molecule. Right? So who knows that? Who can come here and draw it?
I can draw, but I think I have to do two, like 6-sided ones, and then one and so 5-sided, and then it has the OH group on it.
Okay, I will draw it. You just label the carbons. I will be impressed. Right? Okay, look, I'm going to draw it here. Right? It is not very difficult. Look. I hope yes. These are the 3 rings here, and there's a 4th ring also there. These are 4 basic rings in cholesterol molecule. This is also called steroid ring. Now let me tell you the names of these. Yes, A ring, B ring, of course, what is this then? C and D. Right? Now, let me put the carbons here. Number of the carbons here, right? Carbon 1, yes, 2, 3, 4, 5, yes. Then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, from where you will start the 11? Now, 10 finish here, right? This is 8th, this is 9th. So these cannot be started with 11. So we will move it from here. This is the 11th, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 and 17th carbon. Is that right? Then there is a very important additional carbons there with this molecule, right? After 17 we have to put the 18th. Who is going to tell me where to put the 18th? Yes. Anyone? I am not a professor of chemistry, but still I want to teach you this structure because many hormones are derived after the modification of this molecule. Let's put it here, 18th, this carbon. Is that right? And then here you will put it, a carbon here. What is this? 19th. Right? 18th, 19th, and then there is a special chain which is on the side, and that chain is, yes, carbon going from here up. There is a carbon here. What will be this number? 20, right? 20. Then here 21, 20, 20, 21, 20, yes, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and there is here one 27th, right? So that this is 27 carbon molecule, cholesterol molecule. Is that right? And some important points before I go into how the hormones are synthesized, I want to tell you. When you are going to make steroid hormone, first thing which you do is that this molecule has to come into action and it has to go through certain pathway. Now imagine that this man is cholesterol. Come here please. Just imagine this is cholesterol, right? And he is having all these antennae at the top, and we want to send him on the cholesterol highway, right? Do you think this antenna is good for him or it's added load?
Added load.
Added load, you know, this is a intelligent man, so he will love to remove the antenna. So this is first thing which we do. When we are going to make steroid hormones, what we do, we remove this antenna from here, rather from here. All this is removed. When we are going to make hormones, right, some of the basic principle I will tell you that at the very beginning, when hormone cholesterol is going to move into hormone synthesis pathway, first remove this extra load, this thing. Once you have removed this extra load, a long side chain has been removed. How many carbons are left now? Cholesterol was 27 carbon. Now how many are left? It's written there, 21. Now remaining molecule is 21 carbon. Is that right? Now what is your situation? You are 21 carbon. Then after that we have to do one more thing. There is a hydroxyl here. Is that right? And this is a molecule, it's going to move. What do you think? It will better slip with oxygen or with hydroxyl? Oxygen acts as a better wheel. It's circular. So actually another early step is remove the hydroxyl from his foot so that he can slip on the pathway. So very first two things, very early things which we play with the cholesterol molecule is remove a big part of his antenna, only this small part is left, and then remove from his, what is this? His hydroxyl, right? This is hydroxyl. Remove hydrogen from there, leave the oxygen. Now this molecule is ready to slip into different pathways. Another thing, once we have done these things, it is no more 27 carbon molecule of cholesterol. Now it is how many molecules? 21 molecule. Is that right? Now 21 molecule pathway, 21 carbon atoms. When 21 carbon molecule, when it slips into pathway, right, it will end up into what? Usually it will end up into what? It will end up into shit. His coffee fell down and he's telling me this. Molecule is not going to end up into shit, my friend. It is going to end up into urine, my friend. You know why? It's breakdown product eventually, but not at early stage. First, let's make the hormone. Now listen. What is happening? You don't get upset. You will not end up anywhere dangerous, right? You stay here. Okay. Now listen. So what we are talking about, we have removed this antenna. A small sticky thing is left here, right? We have modified here also. It's ready to go. Now it is 21 carbon. 21 carbon molecule, right, will eventually convert into either progesterone or, yes, aldosterone or glucocorticoid, right? So this molecule which is left behind, you can say this 21 carbon molecule can end into aldosterone pathway, mineralocorticoid pathway, or it can go to, yes, glucocorticoid pathways, right? But if you want to make some sexy thing, what sexy things you can make out of this molecule? Yes, ma'am. What sexy thing we can make out of this molecule? Pardon? You don't know any sexy things. Yes. Yes? You are thinking. What about you? Estrogen. But before that, talk about testosterone, my friend. Talk your own sex first.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'm more attracted towards this.
no, you are attracted, but actually if you don't have testosterone, how you will be attracted? So talk about why you are attracted first.
Okay.
Right? Later on you talk where you are attracted. Now listen. So, listen. Now we can send this molecule, I told you, after removing this 21 carbon molecule atom, it can go to mineralocorticoid highway, or it can go to glucocorticoid highway, or it can go into sexy jungle. If it goes into sexy jungle, in that pathway, first it will end up into androgens, male hormones. And if this happens to be in testes, it may end up into which molecule? Testosterone. So there is a sexy jungle pathway, and in that pathway, this molecule moves. But remember, to make this molecule more sexy, what you have to do? At least remove this remaining thing from the top. If you want this guy to be more sexy, remove all the hair. Yes. So in the same, this molecule, if you want to make it really highly sexy molecule, it's going to sex jungle, right? Eventually converting into testosterone and estrogen, then it's not enough to remove this load. Then this molecule, this should be also removed. What is this? Sorry, 20. Carbon and 21. Right? Now it will go into sexy jungle, and eventually it will convert there into androgens. Right? The most powerful androgen, one of the powerful androgen is testosterone, and then its derivative. Right? We'll talk about that later. Androgens. And from where the estrogen come, I think this lady must be knowing. We are talking about this molecule. This is our cholesterol molecule. Right? It is moving along the pathway. Right? If we remove it, make it 21 carbon unit, it can go to where? Mineralocorticoid or glucocorticoid. To make it sexy, we remove everything even at the end, and it becomes how many carbons? If we have removed this from here, how many carbons are left? 19, 17, 18 and 19. Actually, androgens are 19 carbon compounds. It's very easy to understand. Originally cholesterol was 27. You clipped most of them, 21 product may be progesterone or may become aldosterone or may become glucocorticoid. Is that right? But in the very beginning, if you clip 2 more, right, molecule becomes bald. Then it will enter into sexy jungle. There it will convert first into what? Testosterone. But we didn't talk about the other component of the sex, that is estrogen, right? So estrogen, how this molecule will eventually convert into estrogen? Yes, ma'am. No, testosterone convert into, okay, you are trying to confuse me, I understand. We'll talk about those things later. My question is very simple. This molecule will remove even carbon number 20 and 21, remaining is 19 carbon unit, and this can flow into androgens and eventually convert into testosterone. It can convert into testosterone. Is that right? But how to make estrogen? Right? We talk about aldosterone, which is 21 carbon, right? Glucocorticoid, 21 carbon. It will go into sexy jungle after removing this thing, and then it will become 19 carbon. And then, actually, you know, females are so clever, they can convert the androgens into estrogens. You understand it? When females are having estrogen, actually they have some additional enzymes. You should be happy you don't have that. But if you could have that, then you also could convert testosterone or androgens into estrogen. There's a very simple thing. Let's suppose it was how many carbon units here, which is testosterone? 19 carbon. Is that right? What females will do with that molecule of androgen to produce estrogen? Yes, you must be knowing. I will just draw this. Let's suppose that this is the same molecule, and yes, here we have removed it. Is that right? Of course, testosterone does not have this. But to convert testosterone into estrogen, what females will do with this molecule? If this is an androgen molecule, female will do some play a trick with this, but rather they always do with this. Otherwise they won't be females. And they convert their androgens into estrogen. Yes, you must be knowing that.
They remove carbon number 18.
Okay, they remove one more carbon. So they will become how many carbon compound estrogen? 18 carbon. This is one thing. You just imagine, boy is 19-year-old and woman is 18-year-old. In the sexy jungle. Estrogen is how many carbon? 18. And testosterone is how many carbon? 19. It must be a crazy world, isn't it? Then, what other thing they do to this molecule? One thing is, rather than 19 carbon, they make it 18 carbon molecule. One carbon is also slashed away. They do another trick. They do something with this molecule and convert androgens into estrogen. One thing is remove one carbon down, one more thing. You know what they do? They just produce a ring structure here. Right? This is estrogen now. In testosterone, with certain modification, in which number one, there are multiple modifications, but two important you should know. Testosterone is 19 carbon product, right? And estrogen is 18, right? Testosterone, this structure is not ring structure, but female convert the ring number A, you know, A ring into this, and the enzyme which does this function, what is the name of that enzyme? Yeah? Aromatase, aroma. Aroma means what? Aromatic ring, right? So what they have done, they have converted this into aromatic ring. So aromatase. So this is the very basic which I am talking about. Then I will go into detail of this pathway. Listen, we have here a cholesterol molecule. How many carbon it is? Rapidly. 27 cholesterol. We want to make steroid hormones. First principle is remove antenna. When you remove antenna, and leave only up to 21 and remove all this, right? If 21 flows, it can become aldosterone or it can become cortisol pathway. But if you want it to go to sexy jungle and become progesterone, no. Sexy jungle, it should become androgens or eventually estrogen. Then we have to remove even these two carbons, right? Eventually we'll get androgens and what? Estrogen. But one very important thing which I did not mention. On the way, when this molecule is flowing into different pathways, it gets multiple hydroxylations. It gets multiple hydroxylations. So let me tell you what happened to cholesterol molecule in detail, right? Have a seat, please. Now we are going to talk about what happens to cholesterol molecule in detail when this molecule is going to be converted into different hormones. I will again repeat the structure of molecule here. So that during the lecture we'll refer back to the structure again and again. The important point to remember is, yes, this was 17. Is that right? Carbon number 17, here it was. Yes, 18, here it is. 19, here it is. 21, and now onward. These are important points, right? Now, let's suppose there is the cholesterol highway system through which the cholesterol flows out. I'm going to make cholesterol highway system right. Okay, so cholesterol molecule is there, and here this is just about molecules. Don't misinterpret the things in the wrong way. You are laughing to see this diagram. It means in washroom you are always laughing. You want me to explain it? Okay. Anyway, this is a diagram. Cholesterol is here. From where cholesterol can come? It can come from the diet. Is that right? Number one. Number two, cells can synthesize cholesterol also within our body. So it can be de novo synthesis, right? De novo synthesis. And in the blood, cholesterol is moving in which form? It's associated with which very good, LDL particles, right? Low density lipoprotein, they are rich in cholesterol. Then what happens? Cholesterol eventually will go to the target cell, right, where it can be converted into appropriate hormone. For example, in adrenal cortex, suprarenal gland cortex, it can be converted into which things? It can be converted into aldosterone, it can be converted into glucocorticoid, it can be converted into androgens, right? And in testes, it can be converted into testosterone. And in corpus luteum, it will be converted up to progesterone. And Graafian follicle, it can be converted into estrogen. And in placenta also, it can be converted into estrogen, but mostly in progesterone. It means there are different organs which have a capability to convert cholesterol into different type of hormone. It means different cells in these tissues may have different sets of enzymes, right? I will just put here adrenal gland just for little understanding. Adrenal gland has a adrenal medulla, is that right? And it has adrenal cortex. And who knows the histology of adrenal gland? Adrenal cortex histology. It's just like plants of roses there. Look here. This is a flower. Here it is what? It is the stalk. Right? This is made of cells. Right? This is also made of cells. And what should be here then? This network of roots. Is that right? Actually, this is the basic structure of adrenal cortex. That outermost part, it has flowers like that. Is that right? Adrenal cortex, the cells are arranged in outermost part of adrenal cortex. Right? They are arranged like this. And deeper to this, the cells are arranged in long fasciculi. The cells are arranged into long fasciculi. Right? And deepest more part, the cells are arranged into irregular network. This is the histology of adrenal or suprarenal gland. What is this? Cortex. I'm not talking about medulla right now. Adrenal cortex is a very important tissue which is producing many of the steroid hormones. Now, outermost area is called, yes, this flower area. What is this called? Zona? Yes, glomerulosa. Glomerulosa. Don't tell me zona flower. And what is this area? These are long fascicles. So what we call it? Zona fasciculata. Is that right? And this deepest area, this is like a network, zona reticularis. Is that right? Actually, this is the zona glomerulosa which produces these cells, right? They are running the cholesterol molecule up to synthesis of aldosterone or mineralocorticoid pathway. This is zona fasciculata which mainly run the cholesterol molecule and eventually convert that into very good glucocorticoids and little androgens plus little androgens. And this irregular zona reticularis, sexy jungle, it is producing also little amount of glucocorticoid, but it also produces adrenal androgens. Androgens again. What I'm telling you, that there are a lot of rose plants in where? Suprarenal cortex or adrenal cortex. Outermost flowery area is zona glomerulosa, which mainly produces aldosterone. Middle area, which is the most bulkiest area, that is zona fasciculata. It produces mainly glucocorticoid with little androgens. And deepest most area, which is what? Zona reticularis. It produces mainly androgens with some glucocorticoid. Is that right? Any question up to this? Now, when I say cholesterol molecule is going through certain pathway and ending up into aldosterone, you must understand I'm talking about a pathway which is running in zona glomerulosa of the adrenal suprarenal gland. If I'm telling you that cholesterol molecule is being converted into glucocorticoid, it means I'm referring to the metabolic pathway which is running in zona fasciculata and cells of zona reticularis. And if I say that we are making out of cholesterol, we are modifying the cholesterol and ending up into what? Yes, ending up into adrenal androgens. Adrenal androgens, then actually I'm talking about, yes, that pathway is running into zona reticularis and of course little into zona fasciculata. There's no problem here, right? So if I say this person is making aldosterone, zona glomerulosa. If this person is making what? Glucocorticoid, this pathway is running in zona fasciculata. If I'm saying it is making adrenal androgens, it must be running in zona fasciculata and zona reticularis. But if I say this person is making testosterone, this pathway is primarily running in testes, right? But remember, testosterone circulates in the blood and peripheral tissue. It is eventually converted into more active product, right? We'll talk about that later. And then, if I say that the product is, cholesterol molecule is ending up into estrogen, yes, this pathway is mainly running in ovarian follicles. Is that right? Am I clear? Anyway, let's start. That cholesterol is here. There is a cell here which is going to convert cholesterol into final product. First of all, to remove the antenna, cholesterol should enter into mitochondria. This nasty work to remove the antenna, this is done in mitochondria, right? So what happens that I can put here mitochondrion, right? Here the mitochondrion, and in this mitochondrion, what will happen? That cholesterol will enter in, right? Now this cholesterol, when cholesterol enter into it, it is through special protein which can transport the cholesterol from where? From the cytosol into mitochondria of those cells which are doing steroidogenesis. Is that right? Now here it will come. And now cholesterol will be acted upon by a, yes, it will be acted upon by a enzyme, right? And that enzyme will do a very important function. You will tell me what is the function of that enzyme. This enzyme which I'm going to talk about, right? This enzyme is going to, yes, produce a cut here. I told you to run the cholesterol into steroid hormone business, we have to remove the load from the top, right? So what we have to do, we get the cholesterol molecule into the mitochondrion. Here I must mention all those cells which make the steroid hormones. They're very rich in mitochondrions and their mitochondria are very large, and they're also very rich in smooth endoplasmic reticulum, which I will tell you later, which are also present in these cells, because smooth endoplasmic reticulum also plays a big role in synthesis of steroid hormones. Anyway, cholesterol goes here, and when you have removed this chain here, right, the remaining product which is left there, cholesterol without its molecule have lost its antenna, right, and 21 carbon compound is there. That 21 carbon compound is called, very good, pregnenolone. Pregnenolone. You don't look, this is pregnant, right? So what is this? Pregnenolone. So cholesterol can be taken into mitochondria, acted upon by an enzyme, and this enzyme which produces cleavage between which carbon? Carbon number? What was the carbon here? 20. And what was here? 22. And this cutter is cutting here, right? So what we will say that this enzyme is cleaving at which point? Between 20 and 22, and removing that antenna, right, and converting 27 carbon molecule into 21 carbon molecule. And this molecule which results here, this is called pregnenolone. What is this? Pregnenolone. No problem up to this? Clear? Now, the name of this enzyme is, yes, who will tell me the name of this enzyme? What is the name of this enzyme? Desmolase. Desmolase. Now this is very important enzyme. This desmolase is very important enzyme because, yes, because it is regulated by ACTH. This is regulated by, there's a positive effect of, okay, look, here is anterior pituitary which releases ACTH and hypothalamus which releases CRH. Cortico releasing hormone goes to the anterior pituitary cell, and anterior pituitary cell produces what? Adrenocorticotropic hormone, and adrenocorticotropic hormone come down and specially act on the cells of, what is that, suprarenal gland cortex. Which area? Especially what is this? Zona fasciculata and zona reticularis. So ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone, act on these cells and stimulate the enzyme Desmolase, so that cholesterol in these cells should slip into hormone synthesis pathway, right? So ACTH is a very positive influence on this enzyme Desmolase. Is that right? Of course, look here. Eventually these cells will produce glucocorticoids. If these cells under the influence of ACTH produce glucocorticoid, once it is produced, it has a negative feedback here and here. So what happens? That from the hypothalamic pituitary system, CRH and then ACTH is released. It will go to the adrenal cortex, enhance the synthesis of glucocorticoids and androgens, and these glucocorticoids as a negative feedback loop inhibit the further release of CRH by hypothalamus and ACTH from anterior pituitary. Am I clear? I will tell you. Look, let's suppose here you are, right? And let's suppose pregnenolone through multiple pathway eventually convert into what? Cortisol. Now, hypothalamus in arcuate nucleus. Hypothalamus in arcuate nucleus have the neurons with the receptors for glucocorticoids, right? So, this glucocorticoid which are being produced, right, they will act on those neurons and inhibit the neurons so that neurons produce less CRH, so that there is less release of ACTH, so there is less further production of glucocorticoids. You get it? So more glucocorticoids are produced, they negatively influence the CRH and ACTH system, so that excessive glucocorticoid should not be produced. Am I clear? Now, not only this glucocorticoid have receptors here in hypothalamus, glucocorticoid also have receptors on the anterior pituitary cells, those cells which produce ACTH. Is that right? In this way, glucocorticoid have a negative influence, right, on CRH and ACTH, so that there should not be overproduction of what? Glucocorticoid. Am I clear? Now, so this desmolase is under the influence of ACTH, and let's suppose desmolase is activated, cholesterol will convert into pregnenolone in the mitochondrion. Now, from the mitochondrion, pregnenolone will come out into cytosol. And when pregnenolone will come out into cytosol of the cell, it will convert into what? Progesterone. No. I say pregnenolone will come out of, what is this place? Mitochondrion into cytosol. Right? And when it will come out, it will be acted upon by another enzyme, and then it will convert into what? Progesterone. Or progestins. right? It means it has been acted upon by another enzyme. That enzyme is, you remember originally there was hydroxyl here in the cholesterol molecule. What is this carbon number? 1, 2 and 3. Is that right? The second enzyme which is here, right, it is going to attack on the pregnenolone at this point, right, and remove this hydrogen. What enzyme this should be? Dehydrogenase. What should it be? Dehydrogenase enzyme. And this dehydrogenase enzyme, which is playing over here and converting the pregnenolone into progesterone, this dehydrogenase is what? What kind of dehydrogenase? This is which carbon? Carbon number 3. So this is 3 beta, yes, 3 beta hydroxy, because the hydroxyl group was there, hydroxy, yes, dehydrogenase, steroid, hydroxy, steroid, dehydrogenase. So I told you that our cholesterol molecule, look here, this is cholesterol system. Cholesterol molecule first will get its antenna released mainly. What was that function? Done by Desmolase. And then it's here we removed the hydrogen. Is that right? That function was done by 3 beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase. Any problem up to this? No. Now it's ready to enter into pathways. Am I clear? 3 beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase. They removed this look. Originally, cholesterol molecule, when it started, my friend cholesterol, please come here. Look, in the very beginning of the lecture, I told you there was a big antenna here. We had to remove the antenna. That is the function done in the privacy of mitochondria by Desmolase, right? After that, we get it out and then we remove one shoe. The shoe was this side, hydroxyl. Remove the hydrogen, so it has to be done by dehydrogenase. And what is left there is oxygen. And now this molecule will slip into pathways. What is the name of this molecule now? Don't call it cholesterol now.
Progesterone.
Now it is called progesterone. Now this molecule is called progesterone. So cholesterol into pregnenolone into progesterone, right? Now, in corpus luteum, right, of course in the female ovary, corpus luteum pathways run only up to this. Thank you. In corpus luteum, I don't want my cholesterol to run away. Now, corpus luteum, this pathway run up to only this. And in placenta also, this pathway will run up to this and produce progesterone, right? But in other situations, this progesterone can be further modified and converted into, guess what? It can be converted into aldosterone, it can be converted into glucocorticoid, it can be thrown into sexy jungle also. And the same progesterone can be converted into eventually androgens, testosterone and even estrogen. Is that right? Now, so don't underestimate the powers of progestins or progesterone. From here, there are 3 pathways. Now, what could be those pathways? One pathway is going to the sexy jungle. Is that right? And this pathway, I will make it like this. Pathway is going here. If it goes here, what it will make? Testosterone. And if it goes here, this is one of the secondary sexual characteristics in female. So what is this going to be converted? It can be converted into estrogen. So if this progesterone molecule slip into this pathway, it is going into sexy jungle. Is that right? No problem here. But it can opt for, it can go in some other pathways also. It can go another pathway which eventually convert into and determine what will be the level of sodium with water and potassium into urine. Right? What is this pathway going on? This is aldosterone. So it can convert into aldosterone, right, which will act on the renal tubule, right, and determine the retention of salt and water and expulsion of potassium. Or, of course, the pathway will run into this direction in zona granulosa, right? Now, or this can run into another pathway. This system can run into another pathway and then it can convert into what? I think this is something not good. I should reduce its size. Now, look. It can run into, what is that? Aldosterone pathways, right? Mineralocorticoid and determining sodium, water and potassium expulsion and retention, right? Controlling, or it can come down. Here is the leg. In the leg there are bones and other things. Okay, now this can pathway even can come down and eventually end up into where? Production of glucocorticoids. Is that right? Now we have to see there are three options. Go to the mineralocorticoid pathway for progesterone, going to the glucocorticoid pathway, or it get lost into sexy jungle. How it happens? Yes, you have a question. Desmolase, Leta and reticularis, and determines the synthesis of glucocorticoid along with the yes.
Does it do zona glomerulosa too?
No. Zona glomerulosa, even though it may influence the start of the pathway, but in the end there are some other factors which will determine the final production of aldosterone. We'll talk about that. Is that right? Okay. Now let's come back. Now, if it is going to run into progesterone into aldosterone pathway, right? It has to undergo multiple hydroxylations. This molecule of progesterone has to undergo multiple hydroxylations. And if it has to go there, still it has to go under multiple hydroxylations. Now, the difference is these two pathways here. Now, carefully understand this thing. This is a tunnel through which the progesterone has to go through, right? And we can imagine, okay, I'll make it a real tunnel here. This is a tunnel, but it has how many exit? 2 exit. What entered here? Yes? Progesterone. And it can come out and enter into glucocorticoid pathway, or same progesterone can enter here and with a different situation, it can, when it come out, it is headed towards the sexy jungle testosterone business, right? Now, what is happening into this area? Actually, there's a very special enzyme here. The enzyme which is sitting here, this enzyme, this is doing hydroxylation of these molecules at point number 17. Look at it. You remember there was 17 carbon here? There is an enzyme here sitting into this tunnel, right? So when he will be passing through that tunnel, he will be hydroxylated at which point? 17 carbon. So what should be the name of this enzyme which is present into this tunnel in this area? Yes. What should be the name of this enzyme? 17 hydroxylase. What happened to you guys? Right? What is this enzyme here? 17 hydroxylase. Is that right? So we can say in this tunnel the main business is hydroxylation of progesterone at which point? Carbon number 17. But you remember one thing. So when progesterone will come through this tunnel out to this pathway, it will be 17 hydroxyprogesterone, but I don't want to go into that detail. Just whatever is coming out, it is hydroxylated at carbon number 17. But if we want this progesterone to get lost into what? Sexy jungle, then not only we need to hydroxylate at 17, we have to do one more thing. You remember? We have to remove it. So this enzyme should have a cutter also. What that cutter will do? That will cut the, yes, from here, so that carbon number 20 and 21 are also lost. You are understanding? Now listen carefully. When progesterone enter into this pathway, right, if it gets hydroxylated at 17 carbon atom, right, and does not loses its carbon number, what is this, 20 and 21, it is going to glucocorticoid pathway. But if it loses carbon number 20 and 21 also, it has already lost all these carbons, right, then it is headed for the sexy jungle. What is this? What happened? This is headed towards the sex hormone formation, right? Okay. So, is that clear? Now, this function of enzyme where it cuts down between the 17 and 20, this is called 1720 lyase. It is called 1720 lyase, this function. 1720 carbon lyase. Let's have a break for 1 minute only. Right. So someone was asking me a question that this progesterone which is produced, right, is it produced in males also or not? Answer is yes. Actually, progesterone is produced as an end product in those organs which are progesterone producing organs. Like in corpus luteum and placenta, they run the pathway from cholesterol up to this and release progesterone. But actually, those cells which produce aldosterone, or the cells which produce glucocorticoid, or cells which produce androgens, all of them produce progesterone and then convert the progesterone into other steroid hormones. So right now we were talking about if progesterone enter into this tunnel, it will be acted upon by an enzyme called 17-hydroxylase, 17-alpha hydroxylase. Now this 17-alpha hydroxylase will lead to hydroxylation, yes, at which point carbon atom number 17. Now, actually this enzyme has one additional function also, that this enzyme can cut down the small connection between the carbon number 17 and 20, right? And if it break down here between carbon number 17 and 20, then carbon number 20 and 21 will be also lost. Is that right? If carbon number 20 and 21 both are lost, is that right? In that case, when the molecule will come out, right, it has been acted by the enzyme with two actions. Number one, 17-hydroxylase action. Number two, lysis of the bond between carbon number 17 and 20. Is that right? A removal of carbon number 20 and 21. This function, right, cutting function is called 17-20 carbon lyase. Is that right? Now, if progesterone undergoes only 17-hydroxylase, then progesterone which was 21 carbon molecule, it will come out as 17-hydroxyprogesterone, but that will be still 21 carbon molecule. But if progesterone undergoes double action of the enzyme, is that right? Then this will come out as how many carbon? 19 carbon derivative. Is that right? So in this way, the originally 27 carbon derivative, which was basically cholesterol, was converted into, yes, 21, which was pregnenolone, then into progesterone, but still 21, or it may go along glucocorticoid pathway with 17 hydroxylase action, still 21 carbon compound, or it may undergo 17 hydroxylase plus lyase action, and now this product is carbon, how many atoms? 19. Am I clear? Any problem up to here? Now, when this pathway will run further, at the same time, progesterone is also running to this pathway. What is this pathway going to? Aldosterone. Now, if progesterone has to go to aldosterone pathway, it will not be hydroxylated at which point? 17. Right? It means those cholesterol molecule which are going to be aldosterone, they will move this way and escape this hydroxylation. Is that right? But those molecules of cholesterol which are going to be glucocorticoid or what is that? Sex hormones, they will go through this pathway. Is that right? Now, after that, there is another hydroxylation system present over here, and this hydroxylation system, yes, here is another tunnel. There is another tunnel, and this tunnel has this is a double tunnel. Now, if progesterone passes under this tunnel, right, it will come out. Now, this product which is coming out, do you think this product is hydroxylated at 17? No. Is that right? But in this blue tunnel, there is another enzyme, and that enzyme also does hydroxylation, but that enzyme does hydroxylation at carbon number, yes, 21. So the enzyme which is sitting here in this tunnel, what is the name of that enzyme? 21 hydroxylase, 21 beta hydroxylase. Right? If the enzyme which is sitting into these two tunnel, that is 21 beta hydroxylase, it means, now look here, the molecule which is going into aldosterone pathway, listen carefully, that has not been hydroxylated at what? 17, but it will get hydroxylated at which carbon? 21. But molecule which is moving in this pathway, glucocorticoid, it will get one hydroxylation at 17 and other hydroxylation at 21. Now look here, that modifications are coming into molecule. Desmolase removed this portion, right? Let's suppose we are making, what is that? Aldosterone. Then aldosterone is not undergoing 17 hydroxylation, but it will undergo which hydroxylation? 21. Where is 21? Yeah, it has not been lyase pathway because there is no lysis. So it will go into 21. Let me make the molecule of aldosterone at this side. When we were making aldosterone, I am drawing the molecule up to here. You remember the very first thing? We removed this. Is that right? Desmolase action. Second thing what we did here, escape the 17 hydroxylation. But it was getting hydroxylation at which point? 21. So this was carbon number 17. This was carbon number 20. And here is the carbon number 21. Actually, this will get hydroxylation at carbon number 21. Is that right? But if you look at this molecule which is going along this pathway, that will have hydroxylation at 21 as well as hydroxylation at what? 17. So if molecule is hydroxylated at 17 as well as 21, it is going into this pathway. If molecule is hydroxylated only at 21, not here, this is going into aldosterone pathway. Any question up to this? No? Now, again it will go through another combined tunnel, both molecules. and enzyme sitting into this tunnel is, yes, that is 11 beta hydroxylase. 11 beta hydroxylase. So what does it mean? These two molecules will get another hydroxylation, and that hydroxylation will be at carbon number 11. Do you remember where is carbon number 11? Okay, listen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. This is carbon number 11. So there will be one hydroxylation here. Okay, I am putting hydroxylations as stars. Now, attention please. This is action of which enzyme? 17 hydroxylase, right? This is action of 21 hydroxylase, and this is action of 11 hydroxylase. If a molecule has come here, right, it will have all three hydroxylase activities. Is that right? And if it is here, now it is going to be the one or two more steps, and now actually this should be called final end product, which is glucocorticoid. Now, let me tell you now this pathway whole. If you are going to make glucocorticoid, there are many reactions, but I am telling you the only most important. Number one, pump the cholesterol into mitochondria. In which cells? Cells of zona fasciculata and some zona reticularis. Is that right? Secondly, this protein which take the cholesterol into mitochondria, this protein is called stars. Stars for what? Yes, star stands for steroidogenic. This protein is called steroidogenic acute regulatory, right? Steroidogenic acute regulatory protein. This protein keep on pumping cholesterol into this. Is that right? So zona fasciculata cells which are here, cholesterol will come in, it will be acted upon by Desmolase and converted into pregnenolone, come out, right, and then this molecule will go into endoplasmic reticulum, smooth endoplasmic reticulum. All these hydroxylation enzymes are present in smooth endoplasmic reticulum. There it will be acted upon by 17 hydroxylase, then 21 hydroxylase, and then 11 hydroxylase, and eventually end product will be, what is this? Glucocorticoid. Any problem up to this? There's no. Right? So what is this molecule? It is 17 hydroxylase activity. Look, Desmolase activity. Here we converted into progesterone, you remember? Right? 3 beta dehydrogenase. Then 3 hydroxylation. 17 hydroxylation, 21 hydroxylation, and 11 hydroxylation. What is the product? Glucocorticoid. Is that clear? Now, if we talk about mineralocorticoid, that is about aldosterone, then what pathway it has to go? Up to now it has gone 11 hydroxylation. Now product which is present over here, it is not hydroxylated at 17. It has only hydroxylated at 21 and hydroxylated at 11. Is that right? After that, there is additional hydroxylation here, and that is very, very important hydroxylation. There is a special, you can say, pathway, it has to pass through that. Right? Now, there are 2 enzymes into this. Number 1, there is 18 hydroxylase. Number 2, once 18 hydroxylase has produced hydroxylation at which point? Carbon number 18. Where is carbon number 18? Now we are going into this pathway. We have 21 hydroxylation, we have 11 hydroxylation. Now we want to get hydroxylation at 18. Let's go, where is the 18? 18 is the carbon here. Is that right? So, yes, this was carbon number 18. Is that right? Here was the carbon number 19. Carbon number 18 also gets hydroxylated. Right? After hydroxylation, the same carbon also undergoes dehydrogenation. Right? After hydroxylation, this carbon also undergoes dehydrogenation, and the end product, there's dehydrogenase also here, and both of them enzyme together are called aldosterone synthase. Aldosterone synthase. The enzyme, two enzymes which are doing 18 hydroxylation, and also at the same point they are also doing dehydrogenation, and the product which is produced is, yes, aldosterone. Now I'm going to take a little test of you, right? Where is my cholesterol molecule? Please come here. Right. Now this is our cholesterol molecule. You are going to tell me, if I say this is present in a cell of zona glomerulosa, this cholesterol molecule, and it should convert into what? Aldosterone. You guys will tell what are the pathway. First of all, it should enter into mitochondria. There it should remove its main burden. Desmolase activity, come out into cytosol as progesterone, and then what will happen?
Smooth reticulum.
Yes, smooth endoplasmic reticulum, very good. And there what will happen? It will undergo 3 hydroxylation. First of all, he will avoid the hydroxylation at 17, but get hydroxylation. This is aldosterone. Aldosterone will avoid the hydroxylation at 17. Yeah. No, I'm saying it will avoid the. It will escape the hydroxylation at 17. That's important. It will not enter into this tunnel because it may get lost into glucocorticoid or sex jungle. So it will avoid it successfully, right? And then it will go which hydroxylation? 21 hydroxylation, 11 hydroxylation, 18 hydroxylation with dehydrogenation, and now he is aldosterone, ready to be secreted by which cells? Cells of zona glomerulosa in the cortex of suprarenal gland. Is that right? Now let's suppose we have a different cholesterol molecule. You have a set. Can you come here? Another cholesterol molecule. This molecule is going to be glucocorticoid molecule, right? Yeah. Now if this molecule is going to be glucocorticoid, this cholesterol molecule, this pathway must be running in zona fasciculata or zona reticularis in suprarenal gland cortex. Now the first step, this is cholesterol molecule pumped into mitochondria, then inside cut by its antenna, cut by desmolase, right, which is stimulated by ACTH. Very good. Then next step, now it is converted into what? Pregnenolone. You were also converted into pregnenolone and then progesterone. So pregnenolone come out of, what is this funny thing? Mitochondria out, and now he is progesterone. Once it is progesterone acted upon by 3 beta hydroxylase dehydrogenase. Now once it is progesterone, now it will enter into this special tunnel and it will be hydroxylated again at 3 point. Hydroxylation at 17, but it will not lose this beautiful thing, right? Otherwise he will get lost into this side. So 17 hydroxylation, then 21, and then 11, and the finished product will be glucocorticoid. Please have a seat. Now we come to the sexy pathway. Please come here. Right, now we have one more cholesterol molecule. It is headed to the sexy jungle. Is there, you can look at like a Tarzan. Now, mini Tarzan, I think. Okay. Now, actually this cholesterol molecule again started. If it is going to be testosterone, pathway must be running in testes. So this happened to be, he has entered into testes. Or you don't like to go there? Okay, let us convert him into adrenal androgens, because adrenal androgens are produced in males and females both. Is that right? You want to be there? Okay, you preferably there. So he is going to be adrenal androgen, not testosterone from testes, right? Now if he is going to be adrenal androgen, he has to run into metabolic pathway as cholesterol molecule, either in zona fasciculata or zona reticularis. Now, how he will run? First of all, cholesterol pumped into this, right? Carbon removed, 6 carbon chain removed by desmolase, produced pregnenolone. pregnenolone come out into cytosol of these cells and convert into progesterone. Now, progesterone acted upon by a special enzyme which is 17 hydroxylase, and plus it is having an action of 1720 lyase. So when he will come out, he will have here at 17 point what? Hydroxylation, plus this is totally removed. Clear? No problem? Okay. Now when he will come here, this is 19 carbon product. It will run through multiple pathways. Okay, first it has to come to the. Now, it has to, first it will convert into D, who will tell me? Hydro, it's a very complex name, I really hate it. Dehydroepiandrosterone. Dehydroepi, it is sexy jungle, lot of problems. Dehydroepi, yes, dehydroepiandrosterone, right? Or another way to write it is very simple. Dehydroepiandrosterone. Now you know it, isn't it? I knew it. So you know that, right? So he will convert into dehydroepiandrosterone with a little more modification. He will convert into, yes, androstenedione. I don't know who put these names, but anyway we have to go through. Androstenedione, right? Now these two pathway run only up to this in zona reticularis and fasciculata, and these two product, yes, they can come out. They can come out into blood. These two products are very weak androgens. They are like male hormones but very weak, not really powerful. Is that right? These are called what? These are called which androgens? Adrenal androgens, because they are coming from adrenal gland, they are not coming from testosterone, and they are present in males and females both, because females also have suprarenal gland, two of them as males have. Is that right? So what happened that dehydroepiandrosterone and androstenedione, both of them are very weak androgenic hormone. Is that right? They are present, they are produced in males and females both. Is that right? But if this pathway is running in testes, of course in males only, then it will go further changes and eventually convert into testosterone. Another important thing which I want to tell you about this molecule structure, should I draw the molecule structure, this one? Now look, this was the basic structure. Is that right? What happened? We had Desmolase remove the top, then Desmolase remove the top thing, then what happened? 17 hydroxylase here, and this chain was also reduced. You remember? Carbon number lyase did an action here. So small chain also reduced. Now he had hydroxylation here, 17 hydroxylation, you remember? Is that right? And it was also having. Now, actually what happened? This molecule, eventually this point is also removed. And this become, which group is this now? This hydroxylation is further modified as it is coming down. This molecule, when it converts into this and this, it has lost its hydroxyl from here. What is this group? Carbon with double bond and oxygen. Tell me, it is keto group. Have you heard of something keto group? So this is a keto group, and this keto group is attached where? Carbon number 17. Now listen, DHEA and androstenedione both have keto group at 17. So usually we call them 17 keto Yes, androgens. 17 ketoandrogens are derived only in the suprarenal gland. 17 keto are not present in testosterone. Testosterone is further modified and this keto group is lost. It is modified. Is that right? Why I am saying this? Because sometimes if we want to check that someone has androgen level very high, androgens are coming from testes or coming from adrenal area, in the urine they check what? 17 keto androgens, 17 keto steroids. If 17 keto steroids are there, it must be derived from suprarenal gland, zona reticulans and fasciculata. Is that right? Now listen. These two are very weak androgens. They are present in males and females both. Do females need these hormones? They are good for females or bad? What they are doing in females? Pardon? No, females like estrogen to produce, but every female has these weak androgens being produced from suprarenal gland. What are these funny weak are doing in females? In males we understand. What about females? Yes. Yes, ma'am. No idea. Yes. You may be having some idea. Let me tell you, this world will be, let me tell you, if females were not having this little amount of androgen, world will be very bad place for us, for males. Thank God females have little amount of androgens, yes. You know what is this doing? Oh, there's no ovulation going on there. Yes. Oh my God, my dear friends, all the men in the world, you should be thankful to God that females do produce little amount of androgens in their suprarenal glands. Thank God. Why? Of course, men have very strong androgens like testosterone. But thank God females have a little androgen. What they are doing, these androgens? They produce libido in female. Right? And now you understand why men are mad after women? Because they have testosterone, a very powerful libidogenic hormone. And thank God females have a little androgenic hormone, so they do have a little interest in you. Is that right? They don't get as mad as men get mad for the woman. Yes, they don't get as mad for men. They pretended maybe. No, they get mad for men for other reason, other than sex also. Right? For them, if a female gets interested in male, it's not only sex. But male can be so mad under the effect of testosterone. The testosterone really disturb all the balance. Is that right? So again, females and males both produce weak androgens from their suprarenal gland. In female, it has two functions. One function is it produces libido. Why it is very important to highlight? Because when female passes through menopause, what happens to her libido? Yes, it dies. This is the biggest lie in the history. Female libido does not die after the menopause. We tell the female behave like as if you don't have libido. So socially they have trained like that to behave like they've lost their libido. Actually, when females undergo menopause, estrogen and progesterone is lost, ovaries have stopped function. In menopause, suprarenal keep on working and producing androgens. So actually what happens with the female at menopause, they lose the capacity to produce babies. But their love for sex is well maintained, because love for sex and spouse and partner is not dependent mainly on estrogen and progesterone. That is really dependent on these two funny things coming from suprarenal gland. And menopause does not disturb suprarenal gland. But of course, there's a woman who is about 50-year-old, 55-year-old. She is undergoing menopause, right? Of course, she is losing the reproductive capacity. But many people around them understand they've lost the interest in sex. Believe me, they have not lost it. Only they behave as if they have lost it because they cannot compete with the very young 18, 20-year-old woman. So just for self-respect, they say, we don't care. Is that right? But they are lucky again that these are very low level, right? So female libido is derived by androgens from adrenal glands, weak androgens, thank God, right? And another thing, these two are doing one more function. In the females and males both, they are responsible to, in the female especially, because female does not have testosterone in big amount. So in female, they help in growth of axillary hair and pubic hair. Is that right? And libido, that's its function. Rest of the female business is by estrogen, progesterone. Is that
Those two weak hormones only produced in the zona reticularis of the...
these parts of the suprarenal gland, because females do not have testes, you must be knowing.
Right.
Because they don't have testes, they don't have testosterone. The only androgens which are produced in females are mainly from this area, and these are very weak androgens. If they were really powerful androgens, then we will have a lot of troubles, right? They will not spare you. Okay? Everyone understand it? Now, testosterone, if he goes into testes, this cholesterol molecule, then it will go all the way up to testosterone. Is that right? All of you know the functions of testosterone, but one thing which I want to mention, testosterone is released from testes going into blood, and in the peripheral tissue, it is acted upon by a special enzyme which is called 5-alpha reductase. This 5-alpha reductase converts the testosterone into more powerful androgen, and that more powerful androgen is called dihydrotestosterone. Dihydrotestosterone. Is that right? So in the males, number one, some of the masculine features are produced by testosterone, but many of the masculine features are produced by dihydrotestosterone. Is that right? And if this is happening in a female, female is not happy to have, what is this? These androgens or testosterone. So this, she can convert this into what? Estrogens. Estrogens. And the enzyme which is involved is aromatase. Is that right? And little more modification. Am I clear? So this is the basis. Thank you very much. You can go back now. You have been converted into estrogen. Right? So now we can see that actually progesterone does not convert into estrogen directly. Progesterone convert into, yes, progesterone convert into androgens first, and then androgens are modified into estrogen. For example, I will give you a classical example of ovarian follicle. You know, ovarian follicle is having, in outer part, it is having theca cell and stroma cells. Theca and stroma cell produce androgens from ovarian follicle. And these androgens go into granulosa cells of follicle. And granulosa cell of the follicle convert these androgens into estrogen. Right? Again, I just want to highlight, suppose this happens to be an ovary, and this is granulosa cells in the ovary, and here is the ovum which is developing, and outside these are your which cells? Theca cells and stroma cells. Actually theca and stroma cell produce androgens which diffuse into granulosa cell. Granulosa cell have capacity to convert the androgens into estrogens, and then female releases estrogen from her ovary. Am I clear? Any problem up to this? There is no problem. Now these were some basic points about the steroid hormone synthesis. One point more which I want to highlight here, that desmolase is stimulated by ACTH, but desmolase, there is a drug which can damage the desmolase and inhibit its action. What is the name of this drug? This is ketoconazole. Ketoconazole, it is one of the antifungal drug, and it can damage the desmolase, and if desmolase is damaged, what will happen to the person? Deficiency of which hormones? Deficiency of aldosterone, deficiency of glucocorticoid, deficiency of sex hormones. Am I clear? Now I'll talk about some more important point related with this, but before I go into detail, I want to say a few words about hydroxylations. Now we have learned that if hydroxylation is 21, 11 and 18, it is going to be aldosterone. But if hydroxylation is at 17, 21 and 11, it is glucocorticoid. If hydroxylation is in 17 with further modifications and its last chain is also removed, this is going to be, what is that? Sex hormones. Is that right? Now we will talk about that once these hormones are synthesized, lot of hydroxylations occur during the process. What is hydroxylation reaction and what are the enzymes involved into that? I will not go into detail, but few words. Let's suppose this is steroid nucleus. This is steroid nucleus with hydrogen. And we want to convert this into what? We want to get it steroid with hydroxyl. Is that right? Now this reaction is, during this reaction we have added single molecule of oxygen here, right? This reaction in which we add single molecule of oxygen here, this reaction is called monooxygenase reaction. What is this reaction called? Monooxygenase reaction, because single oxygen has been added here. Now, during monooxygenase reaction, actually NADPH plus proton, they interact here, and what is released here? And molecular oxygen is also added here. Plus what is added? Molecular oxygen. Now NADPH, proton and molecular oxygen. What will happen? That this will pass through an enzyme. That enzyme is cytochrome P450 system. This enzyme system is present in inner membrane of mitochondria as well as in endoplasmic reticulum. Now this system is going to produce hydroxylations. So for hydroxylation of steroid nucleus, we need NADPH, right? And what will happen? That these two protons, this hydrogen and this hydrogen, they will react with one oxygen and produce water, and other oxygen has been incorporated here. This was molecular oxygen which has been activated by the heme group which is present in cytochrome P450 system, and this heme group activate the oxygen, right, by loading the oxygen with electrons from this side. When oxygen is loaded with electron, molecular oxygen become reactive, and one atom of oxygen will react with this hydrogen and make, what is this? Hydroxyl. Other will react with these two and produce what? Water. So if someone asks you where the hydroxylations are occurring, these are occurring in endoplasmic reticulum or inner lining of mitochondria. By which enzyme system? Cytochrome enzyme system. What is required? NADPH and molecular oxygen. And what is the reaction called? Monooxygenase reaction or hydroxylation reaction. Now, once this has been produced, right, final product, steroid hormones are produced, they cannot be stored in vesicle. Again, if aldosterone is produced in zona glomerulosa cells, it cannot be stored in vesicles. In the same way, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, glucocorticoid, they like peptide hormones, they are not stored in vesicle. Why? Because all of them are lipid soluble. So as they are synthesized in the cells, at the same time they are being released. And once these hormones are released, steroid hormones are released in the blood, do you think they are soluble in the plasma of the or fluid of the blood? They are not soluble, they are lipid. Is that right? So these steroid hormones, once they are released by the endocrine cells into the blood, because they cannot be soluble in the water of the plasma, they are not water soluble, they are lipophilic molecule, so they cannot be transported in the blood into dissolved form. So there are special plasma protein which bind with these molecules and transport them to the target tissue, right? So what we can say, number one, when these hormones are synthesized, mostly they are not stored in vesicle. Number two, once they come into blood, they are transported in association with plasma protein or transport protein. And when these steroid hormones reach to the target organ or target cell, the receptors for the steroid hormones are present on cell membrane or inside the cell. Yes, suppose this is the target cell, right? Here was your circulatory system, right? So once hormone is produced, right, this hormone is released here, but it is carried by, what is this? Plasma protein. And once it goes to the target tissue, then this hormone will enter into this cell, right? Because it can easily cross the membrane, it will work inside the membrane, so its receptors are not on the membrane. So receptors for steroid hormones are present either in the cytoplasm or they are present into nucleoplasm. For example, here is the receptor which is inactive. But as soon as steroid hormone bind here, this receptor will become active. This active receptor has the special point with which this hormone with the receptor complex can go and bind with the DNA. Now listen, what is happening? This is steroid hormone molecule. It may be testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, aldosterone, whatever, a glucocorticoid. These steroid hormones enter into the target cell. They bind with their receptors either in the cytoplasm or in the nucleus. And then receptor with the hormone complex, they are located to the DNA and they can interact with the DNA and regulate the expression of different genes. How do they exactly work? We'll talk later. Is that right? And because they activate their action, the activation of the genes, of course, genes will express some messenger RNA, then that will be translated into proteins. Then the proteins which has been produced under the influence of the steroid hormone, they will eventually start their function. So do you think steroid hormone can produce their action into seconds or it will take a longer time? Longer time. So steroid hormones take long, they are slow to start their action, but once they have produced the certain proteins, they will keep on working for a long time. So what we can say? Steroid hormones work through the receptors which modify the expression of genes and produce new proteins. And this action of steroid hormone is slow to start, but it is longer lasting action. Eventually these steroid hormones are inactivated in the liver, right? They are eventually inactivated in the liver. Now you want to study the clinical aspects of these synthesis, because now is the most important component that we have to talk about: the deficiency of 17 hydroxylase, deficiency of 21 hydroxylase, 11 hydroxylase, deficiency of 5 alpha reductase. You want to do it right now or tomorrow? Okay, so leave it for tomorrow. Right, so we continue our lecture. Now we are going to talk about the clinical correlates related with the synthesis of steroid hormone. Already we have discussed there is an antifungal drug with the name of Ketoconazole, right? And in some patient, Ketoconazole drug produces severe interference with the function of Desmolase. Desmolase enzyme is inhibited. Then you can understand what will happen. If Desmolase enzyme is inhibited, remember, Desmolase enzyme and conversion of cholesterol into pregnenolone is the rate limiting step in this pathway. What is the rate limiting step? The first rate limiting step in steroidogenesis is conversion of cholesterol to pregnenolone by the action of Desmolase. So if Desmolase is inhibited, then naturally the production of mineralocorticoid, production of glucocorticoid, as well as production of androgens from adrenal glands, all of their production is reduced. After this, I will talk about some more interesting and important inherited disorders which are autosomal recessive disorders related with the deficiencies of these enzymes. First of all, we will talk about the deficiency of 17 alpha hydroxylase. Now, like most of the enzyme related inherited disorder, this is autosomal recessive. The deficiency of 17 alpha hydroxylase. When I say this is autosomal recessive, it means defective gene should come, one copy should come from mother and other defective allele should come from the father, right? Now, you are going to tell me that if this enzyme is not functioning, right? If this enzyme is not functioning, what is going to happen to our patient? Number one, what will happen? Sex hormones will not be produced, right? Not only that sex hormones will not be produced in androgens, but sex hormones will not be produced at other sites also, because one of the initial steps in synthesis of sex hormones, that is androgens and estrogen, is conversion of progesterone into epiandrosterone, right? So first thing which is going to happen in this patient is patient with what deficiency? 17 alpha hydroxylase deficiency. Now, number one consequence of that deficiency will be deficiency of sex hormones. Now, because this is an inherited disorder, deficiency of sex hormone will be from very beginning, even during the fetal time, right? And that will lead to its effect in the males and females both. For example, fetus or baby which is genetically XY, what will happen to that baby? Yes, if sex hormones are not there, is that right? Then what is going to happen? Genetically male fetus. You know, primary design of genitalia is female, and these are the hormones, androgen hormones in the fetus, male fetus, which convert the female genitalia design into male. So what will happen? Even though this person is genetically male, but person will be born, or baby will be born with female-like genitalia. So this is problem number one, that this baby will be born with female-like genitalia. Secondly, second problem will be that secondary sexual characteristics will develop or not? No. And secondary sexual characteristics will not be developing in this genetically male person. In the same way, the fetus or the baby which is born with XX, again what will happen? External genitalia may be female-like but not well developed, ambiguous genitalia. Plus, do you think in this female also secondary sexual characteristics will develop? No, because in this female also secondary sexual characteristics cannot develop, because females require for some secondary sexual characteristics adrenal androgens. For axillary hair and pubic hair, she needs androgen from here, and for libido, and for developing the breast and other secondary sexual characteristics, she needs estrogen. So what happens? Again, this will also have no development of secondary sexual characteristics, right? So we can say that in both cases, males or females, what will happen? There will be feature of hypogonadism, that gonads will not develop. Any question up to this? Right. Second thing, of course, sex hormones are deficient. What about glucocorticoids? Yes. Just look at it. If this is not working, what will happen to glucocorticoids? The synthesis will be reduced. So second complication in this situation is there is, yes, reduced levels of glucocorticoids. Of course, that will lead to hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia, because glucocorticoids are involved in gluconeogenesis and glycogenolysis, and they are responsible. Glucocorticoids can maintain the blood level of glucose, especially in the fasting state. So these patients will develop hypoglycemia. Moreover, when glucocorticoids are deficient, they cannot suppress the production of ACTH from anterior pituitary. You know, normally cortisol and other glucocorticoid can go to the anterior pituitary and inhibit the production of ACTH. But because glucocorticoids are deficient, right, so there's no negative feedback inhibition of anterior pituitary gland, and there's excessive production of, yes, of ACTH. Right? Now, when there is excessive production of ACTH, what's going to happen to adrenal gland? Even though enzymes are deficient, 17-alpha hydroxylase is deficient, but what is going to happen to the gland? It is going to proliferate. You know, ACTH is stimulus to the adrenal cortex. Is that right? When glucocorticoid is not there, what will happen? There is no cortisol to suppress the production of ACTH by the anterior pituitary. Are you understanding me or not? Look, progesterone has to undergo 17 hydroxylation and then undergo 21 hydroxylation and then 11 hydroxylation to convert into glucocorticoids. When we have a block here, 17 alpha hydroxylase, of course, this pathway cannot run, and glucocorticoids are deficient. And if glucocorticoids are deficient, they cannot suppress the anterior pituitary by negative feedback, and anterior pituitary cell keep on producing excessive amount of ACTH. An excessive amount of ACTH will come back to, where it will come back? To adrenal gland and stimulate it, adrenal cortex, and cells will undergo hyperplasia. So that will produce enlargement of adrenal gland bilateral. Is that right? But even though, in spite of the fact the adrenal gland's cortex is hyperplastic, but because enzyme is deficient, still it is unable to what? Make enough adrenal androgens, and it is unable to make glucocorticoid. But that produces another trouble. You know what is that? This pathway is functional. Pathway to mineralocorticoid is functional, right? Because mineralocorticoid pathway does not require 17 hydroxylation. If 17 hydroxylase enzyme is deficient and other enzymes are there, look here. If other enzymes are functioning well, only this is deficient, right? Glucocorticoid deficiency, when it will increase the production of ACTH, that ACTH will act on Desmolase and stimulate the activity of, it's a positive influence on Desmolase. This excessive ACTH overstimulates Desmolase, and more cholesterol is converted into pregnenolone, but it cannot go along this pathway, so it will be diverted along this pathway, and there will be excessive production of along the mineralocorticoid pathway. Am I clear? Now listen, if mineralocorticoid excess occur, now I will write here, this is a third consequence, that there is, yes, excessive mineralocorticoids, right? So what is happening, that there will be excessive mineralocorticoid activity. When mineralocorticoid activity become more, what mineralocorticoid are doing? Mineralocorticoid action leads to, yes, what it will do? Number one, it will retain more sodium and water in the body. Salt and water will be retained because mineralocorticoid reabsorb more salt and water from the distal tubules of kidney, and that will increase what? Extracellular fluid, and that will increase what? Yes, blood pressure. So these patients will be hypertensive. Is that right? So these patients will have no secondary sexual characteristics, and with that they will be hypertensive. And second action of mineralocorticoid is that they lead to what? They retain salt and water, but they expel potassium, right? When they are doing, there's excessive mineralocorticoid activity, there's excessive loss of potassium. Excessive loss of potassium will translate into hypokalemia. And mineralocorticoid also are normally involved in what? Proton expulsion. Is that right? From the renal tubule. So what will happen when in these patients, when mineralocorticoid activity goes up, more potassium is expelled in the urine and more protons or hydrogen ions are thrown into urine, more acid in the urine. So what will happen? Their blood will develop hypokalemia and low level of acidity. So what will happen? What is that? Yes, alkaline situation. So alkalosis. Alkalosis. Again, sorry, let me correct it. When there's more action of what? Mineralocorticoid. They are retaining more salt and water. They are expelling more potassium out. They are expelling more proton out. When they are expelling more proton out, then blood will become alkalotic. Is that right? Now these are the features of high sodium, low potassium and low acid in the blood, alkalosis. These are the features of excessive mineralocorticoid activity. So when these patients will develop excessive mineralocorticoid activity, right? Now these things, especially high blood pressure and low potassium, right? In these patients, especially high blood pressure and low potassium, that will inhibit the renin system. And when renin release, when blood pressure goes up due to salt and water retention and potassium is low, then what happens? That renin release from the kidney is reduced. Is that right? When renin is less, then of course renin convert angiotensinogen into angiotensin 1 in lungs. So what happens? If level of renin goes down, angiotensinogen cannot be converted into angiotensin 1 in the lungs. Is that right? And when renin is released less, angiotensinogen cannot be converted into angiotensin 1, then angiotensin 1 actually is converted in the lung into angiotensin 2 normally. And what is their enzyme? Angiotensin converting enzyme here. Let me repeat it. What happens? In this patient, 17-alpha hydroxylase is deficient. Is that right? Due to this deficiency, number one, sex hormones are not produced. Number two, glucocorticoid pathway is blocked. Is that right? And that will lead to excessive release of ACTH from anterior pituitary. That will stimulate the desmolase, and excessive amount of pregnenolone and progesterone, which cannot enter into these two pathways, will be diverted along the pathway of mineralocorticoid. Excessive mineralocorticoid will be produced, and these excessive mineralocorticoid will eventually lead to what? They will lead to salt and water retention and high blood pressure, excessive expulsion of potassium, hypokalemia, excessive expulsion of protons in urine, acid into urine, alkalosis. All these things, especially high blood pressure and low potassium, they affect the renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system. How do they affect? They reduce the production of renin from the kidney. When renin is less, then angiotensinogen cannot be converted into angiotensin 1 in the blood. Then angiotensin 1 is having low level. When there are low level of angiotensin 1, then of course production of angiotensin 1 into angiotensin 2 by the lungs is also reduced. So in these patients, levels of angiotensin 2 will become less. When levels of angiotensin 2 will become less, look here. Along the mineralocorticoid pathway, the last step is 18-hydroxylation, right? Along with that, 18-hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase activity. So what happens? The last step is the last enzyme in aldosterone synthesis is that on the 18 carbon of steroid ring, first we do hydroxylation, and then we do dehydrogenation. And the enzyme which is doing this function, that is called aldosterone synthase, which is doing these two functions and producing aldosterone. Is that right? But this enzyme is under regulation of angiotensin 2. So what happens when angiotensin 2 levels are very low, right? Then they are not going to stimulate it much. You are understanding? But still, because it is not stimulated, so it means there will be some reduced activity of this pathway at this point. So aldosterone level may also go down. But precursors of aldosterone, which is here corticosterone and here 11-deoxycorticosterone, these two have a strong mineralocorticoid activity. So in spite of the fact, then when mineralocorticoid activity goes up, renin-angiotensin system is inhibited and less angiotensin 2 inhibit the aldosterone synthase. So what really happened? There is a block here also. So there is a block here and secondarily there is a block here. Are you with me? So what will happen? All these pathway product will come here and accumulate as 11-deoxycorticosterone and as corticosterone. But these two products are also having good action as a mineralocorticoid, so they will keep high level of mineralocorticoid and patient will still have high blood pressure, low potassium and alkalosis. Any question up to this? Right? So what does it mean? That any patient who come with no secondary sexual characteristics, is that right? And if there are no secondary sexual characteristics and blood pressure is high, you have to rule out the deficiency of 17-alpha hydroxylase. No question. Now we come to deficiency of another hormone, and what is that? That is deficiency of 21-beta hydroxylase. Now, if someone has deficiency of 21-beta hydroxylase, what is going to happen? Deficiency of 21-beta hydroxylase. Here I want to tell you something. Listen carefully. The patient who have 21-beta hydroxylase or 11-beta hydroxylase, these patients of course will have low level of glucocorticoids. Again, what I am saying, that patient which has 17-alpha hydroxylase or what is this? 21-beta hydroxylase or 11-beta hydroxylase, in all these cases glucocorticoid levels are less. Now, when glucocorticoid levels are less, I explained it, ACTH levels will go up. Is that right? So, and that will lead to adrenal hyperplasia. So, those patients who have 21 hydroxylase deficiency or the patient who have 11-beta hydroxylase deficiency, they also develop hyperplasia of adrenal cortex. You are looking lost. Where you lose me?
No, I'm okay. It's just all new material.
It's too much material?
No, it's fine.
Okay. Again, now I will ask you a question and you will answer. If 21 hydroxylase is deficient in one person and 11 hydroxylase is deficient in other person, can these people develop glucocorticoids? No. If they cannot maintain good level of glucocorticoids in their blood, can they suppress the production of ACTH from the anterior pituitary? So their body will have normal ACTH level or higher ACTH level. Higher. When ACTH level will be higher, it will overstimulate the adrenal cortex and adrenal cortex will undergo hyperplasia. And when adrenal cortex will undergo hyperplasia, these conditions are also called congenital adrenal hyperplasia. What we call it? Let me put it here. The condition is called congenital adrenal hyperplasia. Now we are going to talk about two important causes of we are going to talk about two important causes of congenital adrenal hyperplasia, right? One cause of congenital adrenal hyperplasia is what is this? 21 hydroxylase deficiency. 21 hydroxylase deficiency. Is that right? And other cause is, what is this? 11 hydroxylase deficiency. Now, common thing in both of these things is that you have 21 hydroxylase deficiency or you have 11 hydroxylase deficiency. In both cases, glucocorticoids are less and ACTH is high, and adrenal gland will undergo, adrenal cortex will undergo hyperplasia, and because this is an inherited disorder, it is present from the birth, so we call it congenital adrenal hyperplasia. So it may be due to either 21 hydroxylase deficiency or 11 hydroxylase deficiency. Any problem in understanding this? There is no. But another thing, any one of these is deficient, any one of these two enzymes is deficient, what will happen to sex hormones?
I would assume that they would either stay the same or go up.
They will go up. The reason being, again, as I told you, that either this is deficient or that is deficient. Cortisol is less, ACTH is high. ACTH will lead to proliferation of the cells of adrenal cortex, plus ACTH will stimulate Desmolase. So no more than normal precursors are coming up to progesterone. When this progesterone cannot go along any one of these two pathways, most of it will be diverted there. So there will be excess of sex hormones. What will happen? That there will be excess of sex hormone. So in both cases, the common thing is, yes, low glucocorticoids. In both cases, that will lead to low glucocorticoid will lead to increase ACTH, right? And excessive ACTH will lead to adrenal gland, yes, hyperplasia, plus it will lead to, yes, overstimulation of Desmolase activity, and that will lead to what? Yes, increased sex hormones. Increased sex hormones as pathway along glucocorticoid and mineralocorticoid is defected. Am I clear? Now, when sex hormones are excessive, what will happen to males and females? Males will develop precocious puberty, right? Maybe you find a 6-year-old boy who is rapidly developing secondary sexual characteristics and developing too much sexual interest in females around. You are understanding? So what happens? One of the problem is that these children, in the boys, they develop due to excessive sex hormones. Boys develop precocious puberty, right? And what will happen to females? In 21 hydroxylase deficiency. So remember, 21 hydroxylase deficiency is far more common than 11 hydroxylase deficiency. In cases of congenital adrenal hyperplasia, 90% cases belong to 21 hydroxylase deficiency. But the common things in both of them is they both have corticoid less, ACTH high, adrenal gland hyperplasia, Desmolase more activity, and because Desmolase cannot go into this pathway, Desmolase produce pregnenolone and eventually progesterone, all is diverted along the sex hormone pathway. Excessive sex hormone pathway, in the boys it will produce precocious puberty. And what will happen to the girls? Yes. What will happen to the girls? They will have more androgens from adrenal gland. You know, adrenal gland activity, adrenal androgens will be excessively present in the girls and they will develop masculinization, right? Their clitoris will become long. Is that right? And their genitalia may be ambiguous, right? And they will develop here, you are understanding? Masculinization of females. masculinization of females. Is that right? Due to this reason, we can say when there's 21 hydroxylase deficiency or 11 hydroxylase deficiency, not only adrenal gland undergo hyperplasia, but excessive amount of sex hormones produce genital problems. Due to this reason, these syndromes are also called adrenogenital syndromes. The other name for these syndromes is, yes, what is the other name? Adrenogenital syndromes. Congenital adrenal hyperplasia, when they are due to deficiency of 21 hydroxylase or 11 hydroxylase, there is excessive sex hormones and produce genital problems. We can also call it adrenogenital syndrome. Any question up to this? There is no question. Secondly, this was about sex hormones, and now let's follow 21 hydroxylase forward. If the block is here, if this is not working, right? Of course, you know that when glucocorticoid is less, that will produce hypoglycemia. But if it is not there, do you think there will be mineralocorticoid activity if this is blocked? So there will be severe deficiency of mineralocorticoid activity. And when there is severe deficiency of mineralocorticoid activity, decreased mineralocorticoid activity, that will lead to what? Yes, if there are no mineralocorticoids, that will lead to waste of salt and water. So there will be low sodium, yes, plus in the body there will be low water, and that will lead to less extracellular fluid, and that will lead to low blood pressure. So these babies will develop low blood pressure. It's very important to understand that when there is 21 hydroxylase deficiency, there is severe deficiency of mineralocorticoid, and deficiency of mineralocorticoid lead to the loss of salt and water in urine and produces severe hypovolemia. Sometimes newborn baby may undergo hypovolemic shock. Sometimes due to this reason, newborn baby may undergo hypovolemic shock. Of course, when mineralocorticoid activity is less, sodium and salt and water is wasted. Is that right? And potassium is retained. You remember aldosterone and related mineralocorticoid, they normally retain salt and water and expel sodium and proton. Now salt and water cannot be retained and potassium and protons cannot be expelled. So there will be hyperkalemia. Are you with me? Right? With that, proton level and acidosis can also occur. When there is no mineralocorticoids, right, salt and water cannot be retained and potassium and protons cannot be expelled out of you through the renal tubules, right? So now these things can be fatal, especially severe volume depletion and hypotension can kill the baby, or hyperkalemia can also produce cardiac arrhythmia and produce death, right? So this is a very dangerous situation. Due to this reason, we need to, if there is severe deficiency of enzymes, then we need to replace mineralocorticoid, right? Synthetic mineralocorticoid is available with the name of, yes, fludrocortisone. Fludrocortisone, and this is life-saving, right? Although if there is severe aldosterone deficiency, that can threaten the life, right, due to wastage of salt and water and retention of potassium. So fludrocortisone is one drug which is used to reduce the mineralocorticoid deficiency. Along with that, to manage the deficiency of glucocorticoid, another drug is given, that is dexamethasone. Dexamethasone. Any question up to this? There is no. Now listen carefully. Attention. Last but not the least. Up to now, whatever we have learned, all of this here is true about 21 hydroxylase deficiency. right? But there is something special about 11 beta hydroxylase deficiency. Now listen carefully. When I said that you have 21 hydroxylase deficiency, or you have, what is this, 11 beta hydroxylase deficiency, in both cases you will develop sex hormone excess. So that is same in both cases. Is that right? Then I said that in both cases glucocorticoid deficiency will be there. Is that right? But a very special different point is that if the patient who is having 11 hydroxylase deficiency, right, this person will have accumulate this product because 21 is working. If 21 beta hydroxylase is working, this will convert, this will produce here a product which is called 11-deoxycorticosterone. Now 11-deoxycorticosterone has a good mineralocorticoid activity. It has a good mineralocorticoid activity. So what really happens? In 11 beta hydroxylase deficiency, even though 11-deoxycorticosterone cannot be converted into corticosterone, and of course you have deficiency of aldosterone. But still, even if block is here, the block is here, right? 11-deoxycorticosterone which is accumulated, it has good mineralocorticoid activity. Due to that reason, these patients who have 11 hydroxylase deficiency, they don't develop mineralocorticoid deficiency as compared to the 21 hydroxylase. So, a high level of mineralocorticoid activity leads to lot of salt and water retention and high blood pressure. So basically, these patients have high blood pressure, right? And these patients have, yes, low blood pressure. Am I clear to everyone? So again, if you compare, again, congenital adrenal hyperplasia, which is commonly seen in patients with 21 and 11 hydroxylase deficiency. What really happens there? When these deficiencies are there, right? Glucocorticoid levels go down, excessive ACTH, that lead to overstimulation of Desmolase and sex hormones become excessive. Plus, that lead to hyperplasia of, what was that? Adrenal cortex. Excess hormones will produce precocious puberty in the boys and produce masculinization in the female newborn babies, right? Then, if there's 21 hydroxylase deficiency, there are no mineralocorticoid. So that will produce severe deficiency of mineralocorticoid, and we need to give fludrocortisone along with the dexamethasone. But if block is at 11 hydroxylase, then the accumulation of 11-deoxycorticosterone has enough mineralocorticoid activity, and that will maintain what? Blood pressure of the person, even may produce hypertension. Any question here? Now one more clinical correlate. Let's come over here. If someone has deficiency of 5-alpha reductase, if there's a boy who is born with the deficiency of 5-alpha reductase, it means this baby will have deficiency of, what is this? Dihydrotestosterone. Now, dihydrotestosterone is required in the male fetus for development of male genitalia. So, if someone has deficiency of 5-alpha reductase, this person does not have capability to convert testosterone into more active dihydrotestosterone. And when there is deficiency of dihydrotestosterone, then male fetus cannot properly develop male genitalia. This baby is born with female-like genitalia. Is that right? With larger, apparently larger clitoris, but actually that is a smaller penis. Is that right? Now, when this baby will go around the age of 12 or 13, lot of testosterone will be produced. Is that right? Lot of testosterone will be produced, even though still testosterone is not converted into enough dihydrotestosterone. But very high levels of testosterone will rapidly start developing rapidly stimulate the development of male genitalia. So this situation is also called penis at 12 syndrome. Penis at 12 means 12 years. Penis at 12 syndrome. right? That this baby, when it is born, it is not having a well developed penis, but around the age of 12, when testosterone level go very high, right, 12, 13, 40, now his penis will develop. Many of these babies are unfortunately sometimes, initially, they are diagnosed as females, they are raised as females, and then they say female is trying to convert into male. Actually, what is happening, that clitoris, which was originally a small penis, start developing due to high level of testosterone. Any question here?
So then, when they go through puberty and there's an increased production of testosterone, that basically overrides the system?
Yeah, actually when they go in puberty, some of the male features will be developed, but some will not be developed. Some male features depend on dihydrotestosterone. They will not be developed. Is that right? And those features which develop on, depend on testosterone, they will be developed. But these days, once they are diagnosed, they can be given synthetic compound. Is that right?
They are originally XY babies.
Of course, these are originally XY babies, right? Now, the last point. Last point which I am going to talk about and related to the steroidogenesis pathway is the role of licorice. There is a drug. Just 2 minutes I will take more. There is a drug with the name of licorice. You will study in pharmacology in detail. This drug inhibits the conversion of cortisol into cortisone. Right? You will study in detail in pharmacology. Right now, this is enough to understand that licorice can inhibit the conversion of cortisol into cortisone. Now, cortisol has mineralocorticoid activity. Mineralocorticoid activity. Right? But cortisone has no mineralocorticoid activity. Right? Now listen, if you are taking licorice and if it inhibits the enzyme which convert cortisol into cortisone, your body will develop excess of cortisol, and excessive amount of cortisol have strong mineralocorticoid activity. Mineralocorticoid will retain the salt and water in the body and you will develop hypertension. So one of the side effects of licorice is, yes, excessive mineralocorticoid activity which will lead to hypertension or high blood pressure. And that's all about the steroid hormone synthesis and their clinical correlate.